Hey Jexiteers, thanks again for stopping by. If you're new to the channel, my name is Riley and I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. And today I'm joined by Dane and Tiffany Nielsen. Dane and Tiffany started waking up from their Jehovah's Witness indoctrination just this year, in the beginning of this year, after questioning some of the things they were raised to believe. And they eventually disassociated formally from the organization in July. This is their story. Hi, Dane and Tiffany. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Great. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with me.
Excited to be here.
So I first stumbled across the two of you on TikTok, which I've only just recently joined in the past 2 weeks or so. And I stumbled across your videos first, Tiffany, and I found them really engaging and very informative as well. And we've been communicating a little bit on TikTok, so I thought it would be great to reach out to you to see if you'd be interested in an interview.
So excited to be here. Thank you. And it's the first time that I've really been able to share my voice. So it's been a really great experience so far.
Great. And I know I've really immensely enjoyed hearing about your journey and your path out of the organization and your experiences. So please tell us a little bit about yourselves. How did you both come to be Jehovah's Witnesses?
We were both born in. My grandparents were witnesses, or even great-grandparents. So yeah, I guess is that fourth generation now? Yeah. So I'm a fourth generation witness. And my two sisters left when they were younger, but I stayed, and I'm 24 right now. So I just disassociated this year.
Wow. And what about yourself, Dane?
My mom started studying when she was pregnant with my brother. So I was about 1 when my mom joined the truth. Sorry, that's a hard habit to break.
I know.
I still say that. I remind myself not to say that. My mom joined the organization when I was 1 and my brother wasn't born yet. So technically I had 1 birthday. And then my dad was not a believer until my sister was born, which was about 18 years ago. So then he started studying. He and I got baptized on the same day when I was about 16. I was almost 16, so I was only 15 when I got baptized. But so I don't have the lineage, the dynasty of people being involved with the organization. But nonetheless, my parents became very involved, particularly in my teenage years.
Right. So what was your life like growing up as a Jehovah's Witness? How did you find that?
Do you want me to go first on this one? Because I think
question.
yours is much more loaded.
Yeah.
So my childhood growing up, as a witness, I had siblings. My mom was sort of the spiritual head of our family for years. So that was sort of an interesting thing where my dad had his, worldly family that would kind of pull him in one direction and just, sort of, wish that the kids would be involved with, Christmas or whatever else, because that was a big holiday for them. But then there was always my mom to kind of like make sure to kind of protect us from that stuff. So I did have a very shielded childhood. My mom went so far as to, when we did get into school, she specifically sought out schools where she could be involved. So sort of parent partnership schooling programs. So it wasn't that I was necessarily like schooled at home, but I definitely wasn't exposed to public schooling, in an effort to keep me, protected again from worldly kids. So a lot of former witnesses will say, "Oh, I had a very sheltered childhood." I say I had a exceptionally sheltered childhood. I was very cut off from normal kid activities.
Yeah, that would be hard as your mom's a teacher. So
Yes.
Yeah.
And what about your childhood, Tiffany?
I grew up in an abusive household, and my father was an elder at one point, and it was kind of this disguise of holiness and spirituality, but really like we were just not happy, and I live with my grandparents who are very devout witnesses. So I kind of became indoctrinated because they were very monumental times of my life. I think it was from like 11 to 14. So I was very moldable at that time. And then I got baptized at 18.
Right. I'm sorry to hear that you had such a difficult childhood.
Yeah.
Did the fact that you were witnesses add to that difficulty in any way? Did it compound the problem?
Percent. And there's so much gaslighting that I thought that was normal, and I was the one that was wrong or bad. And turns out, I lived in an abusive household, and I was in a cult. So yeah.
When you deal with those types of situations, particularly being raised in the organization, you're never taught to seek any type of outside help. Everything is going to be dealt with. The first line of defense is the family organization. And when you have such a strong patriarchy, sort of misogynistic setup with that, especially if your dad is the abusive one, he's also the first person that you would have to talk to about that. So naturally that didn't happen. And then should you ever go to the elders, then it sort of ends up being dealt with privately. So at no point do you ever seek out the aid of a therapist or child protective services. Yeah,
I remember when I was younger, I think I was a freshman in high school at this point. Or was I? I don't remember. I knew I was in my young teenage years. But it was particularly bad at this season of life, just how abusive it was. And I remember just feeling like I needed to talk to somebody. And so I went up to one of the elders that I knew since I was a baby, and I just asked if I could have a Bible study with somebody. And I remember going back to my dad and stepmom, and they were really paranoid and being like, what were you talking about with this elder? And they were really scared, but I didn't say anything. I was scared
Wow. Did that impact you in a way that made you feel that you weren't allowed to speak to anyone outside of the family or about any problems that you were having?
Definitely. I was very isolated growing up and just didn't have really any adults in my life. Well, actually, I did have some adults, and they knew what we were going through, but they could only do so much.
Yeah, of course. So as you got older, how did things get better or did they get worse?
It got better when I got married to Dane. I got married at 19. I did the whole witness thing, got married in the Kingdom Hall. And being out on my own with Dane was the first time I ever felt at peace and happy.
That's really nice to hear. And
that means a lot.
It's obvious that you're still very close, which is a good thing, because it often goes the other way, where one partner wakes up and the other one doesn't, and invariably they end up separating, which is very sad. It's really nice to see that hasn't happened in your case.
We always talked about when we were dating, the biggest thing that we had going for us was communication, just being able to talk about stuff and not, not to get judgmental one way or another. Whatever, the topic was, we would, hear the other person out. And so I think we carried that into our marriage. And so because she definitely started waking up before I did. I was pretty complacent. I was ready to kind of slowly fade away. But when we started talking, she said, I don't, I want you, she would say things like, I want you to know that if you don't feel the same, you don't feel obligated to like follow me out, so to speak. But we would have these conversations. And she really afforded me the chance to prove it to myself what I believe. And we've come to a point now where I still hold to some, I guess you could generally call them agnostic viewpoints. I'm not bothered by the idea of God. I just don't think that it's what people think it is. Whereas she has a little bit harder lines on that. But we also are very understanding of each other's viewpoints, and we don't try and persuade the other one way or another. We've done enough of that when we were in.
That's great. I mean, the strange thing, well, it's strange to me now about Jehovah's Witness marriages is that you're each supposed to think about and love Jehovah more than each other. So from day one, the person you're marrying is not the most important person in your life, which to me now, looking back on it, is just completely bizarre. I can't see how any marriages can work under that kind of, under that system. Obviously some do, but many are very, very unhappy.
If you don't think about it that much, just
yeah. So where did it all start to go wrong or right, depending on how you see it?
Well, for me, like I said, we started having discussions, and I think when Tiffany started saying that, I'm having these doubts. I don't know that I believe, what we've been taught our whole childhood. I came into the conversation not with any preconceived idea. I still had the thought in my head that I was going to try to, blend the two thought processes. I thought I was going to try and, still somehow manage to be a witness, but be a little more open-minded. And so I came into the conversations trying to be understanding. But what came with that is critical thinking. And that has been an interesting thing, because I've seen parts recently from, broadcasts on JW Broadcasting and other things like that, where they're saying, we encourage your critical thinking, but they don't.
If we could go back a little bit, so you mentioned that Tiffany was the one who started waking up first. Could you just talk us through that process, Tiffany? What was like the first thing that happened?
Was starting to be on TikTok and having different point of views and what spirituality is, what happens after you die. And one of the things that got me thinking and started questioning is, why would the organization be so adamant about not looking up anything about the organization? And I feel like that's a red flag in itself. And I took the first step with researching and being on the ExJW Reddit, and I'm trying to think of other ones, JW Facts. And within an afternoon, my faith had completely crumbled, and I saw that it was not the truth.
And what was that experience like, looking at an apostate website for the very first time?
It was definitely scary. I remember being so nervous, and because that's what you're told your entire life, and everything's a lie. And I quickly realized that, especially on TikTok and Reddit, people are just sharing their experiences. And I feel like, I don't know, I just didn't see the apostate lies that the governing body always talked about.
Yeah. I mean, my experience was similar. I had a full-on anxiety attack the first time that I looked at an apostate video. It wasn't a website, it was a video on YouTube. I was sweating, my hands were shaking, everything. And I think that's very, very common. I mean, it's something that I've heard over and over again. And it's a symptom of mind control. It's a symptom of being programmed. It's like you're breaking your programming. Was it like that for you as well, Dane, the first time you looked at an apostate information source?
So I will be honest, I didn't have the same reaction to it, I think. And it's possible that I maybe the blow was softened for me a little bit because it was presented to me by my wife, who I already have, deep, abiding trust for, or a trust in. So the other thing is that for me, I think that I never had the strongest faith in the JW doctrines anyway. As much as I wasn't involved, brother, I had privileges in the hall, and I had, would give talks and everything. It sounds bad now. I sound like a bad witness, but it was something I did. It wasn't really that, they repeatedly will tell you, when you're in the organization, make the truth your own. And that's great. It's a nice little tagline, but they don't really teach you how to do that. I think they try, but it comes across strange. So I never had that, I would die for this information. It just was never that way for me. It was always just, I don't know, my family goes and my friends are here. So when I was exposed to these apostate teachings, it was a lot more like, yeah, that's exactly how I grew up. That's normal. It wasn't. It was. So
I think that the witnesses that are still in and saw us leave think that we left so that we could go sin or lead an immoral lifestyle. And that was not it at all. I feel like learning the truth about the truth was actually one of the most devastating and heartbreaking things.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. Leaving the organization is not easy. It's not easy at all. The cost of leaving is so high. It's not something that, when I learned the truth about the truth, I desperately didn't want it to be real. I didn't want it to be true. I was already physically out of the organization, but I still believed it was the truth. I had no plans of going back, but I still wanted it to be true.
Because I remember it's heartbreaking to think your entire life that you're going to see your dead loved ones after you die. And yeah, it's a hard realization to come to.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much. I mean, it's sort of like losing someone that you're close to. You go through all the stages of grief. I know I certainly did. I went through them all. I remember when I found out that Rutherford had written that letter to Hitler in the Declaration of Facts, and that completely shook me to my core. I was the huge sense of disappointment that I felt. Because I actually found that out after I woke up. I was no longer a believer, but I still thought that the witnesses were kind of better than everyone else.
Yeah.
But
I think that's part of that. Part of the programming, though, is that you are taught that you're not like anyone else. And that has been a big thing about waking up that I've come to realize, because a lot of the first religious-centric videos that I saw on TikTok were coming from, ex-evangelicals, and when you're raised as a witness, you are taught that our faith is unlike anyone else, and then you start seeing so many similarities, and a lot of the things that we were so proud that we were different over. We're just not. It wasn't that we were that some exclusive club that we were the only ones who did this. There's a lot of groups that do this stuff, and so that's another thing where we we think, oh gosh, these Mormons are crazy. These people at these big tent revivals are crazy. But then when you look at it, you've also got, we also had a door-to-door ministry, and we also had large gatherings on a regular basis where everybody would get together. And, over the course of, 3 days, just mental and physical exhaustion starts weeping at the end of it. It's like, it was the Spirit. And it was like, no, your kids screamed at you for 3 days.
There are so many similarities between Witnesses and other, fringe religious groups. It's staggering. The similarities never ever cease to amaze me, and I'm finding out more all the time. So, what was it like disassociating, and what made you choose disassociating formally rather than just fading away?
Can I jump on that one? Yeah. I am self-employed, meaning I'm my own boss. I set my own schedule, and part of that was that my dad also is self-employed, so we would do jobs together. So we were on a particularly long job that we had been working for a while. And my dad had become aware that we were drifting away. But my dad being the way that, I don't know, most dads are, we never actually had meaningful conversations while we were working. To be fair, we didn't have a ton of super meaningful conversations. A lot of the time he's, a bit more conservative with his emotional availability. And so rather than ever, having a conversation with me leading up to this, it wasn't until we had already decided that this isn't right. This isn't what we believe anymore. And then it was a few weeks after we had that conversation, and we were still in the mindset that we were going to fade away, which would afford us, the access to family and friends that we had grown up with, but not necessarily, agreeing with the religious teachings. But my dad actually was a little bit there to kind of force my hand as far as that goes. He had become aware that for our 5th anniversary, we got tattoos. We got a matching set of tattoos. That was sort of, this little promise, something we could do, for each other. And so they had found out about that. And again, nobody said anything about it. And it wasn't until just one day on a lunch break, my dad was just like, so what are you, like, leaving the truth? And it, in that tone, and so it was, I had a pretty frank discussion with him, bringing up a lot of things, bothered me about the teachings and how we had, kind of decided that it wasn't really for us anymore. And then at the end of the discussion, rather than him really taking to heart anything that I had said, he basically said, you got to do something. You can't just sit here and have this double life going on. And, and I do really value honesty. So in that sense, I just said, you know what, you're right. And I went home and I said, I don't think I can fade. I don't see myself suddenly becoming okay with a lot of the teachings that they have going on. But, I'm not gonna go back, and I don't want to lie to people and pretend that I am something I'm not. So we decided we were going to write our letters, and that was a frightening thing. It was a frightening thing to do, and that's that's telling. It's telling. You shouldn't be afraid to tell people what you believe, and so. Yeah, for me, I was not in the mindset. I was not in the mindset to write the letter. But then when my hand was forced, it was a little more like, yeah, no, it's okay. I'm glad it happened, because I probably would have lukewarmed my way out, as opposed to just, turning on the cold water and waking up.
And how did the experience feel for you, Tiffany? What was it like?
Is that if we were to fade, we would be walking on eggshells and looking behind our backs for the rest of our life, with the possibility of still getting disfellowshipped anyway. And so it was rationalized to me that it would make more sense to just have a clean break and move on with our lives, and for our kids to never remember what it was like to step into a kingdom hall. And I'm really glad that we decided to do that, because the last several months that we've been out, we've probably been the happiest that we've ever been in our lives. I mean, there's a lot of grief there still, but it's we can question our own beliefs now, and I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. So, are you currently being shunned by friends and family?
Do you want to go?
Yeah, I definitely I did not have a backup group of friends, being that I was such a, I was a sheltered witness kid. I didn't have, oh, this friend from school, or oh, this guy from work, because again, I only worked with witnesses. All my friends were witnesses. My family are all witnesses. Well, not all of my family is witnesses. I've got some that live in like Texas that are not witnesses, but also not the type of people to be like, anytime, come down. They would say that, but it would also be like, ooh, hold the phone. So for me, being excommunicated means, I don't have a friend group. I don't have my family around me. My brother got married in August. Was it August?
I lost track.
Yeah, my brother got married a few weeks after we formally disassociated, and I was uninvited to his wedding. But he did do me the courtesy of offering me a Zoom link to watch, which I, did. But, it's a little frustrating because the wedding took place at the house belonging to a worldly family member. Many of our worldly family members were invited to the wedding, but not me, because I was the bad one. So that was, that hurts. My brother was one of my best friends, and just to kind of see that all take that back seat, you already mentioned how when you're raised in the organization that you are, your relationship with Jehovah goes before everything else, and that includes spouses and children and immediate family members. So, yeah, yes, I'm shunned because because my family loves loves something else more than me. I'm gonna go cry now.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where if you don't laugh, you will cry.
Yeah.
I have many of those moments myself. Yeah. Well, what about you, Tiffany?
I lived with another family for part of my life, growing up, who were witnesses, and when I sent a group message to them because, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. They didn't even reply to my message that I was disassociating. So it's just really strange. And even my best friends were talking to me up until I told them that I was leaving. And I was mentally out the entire time. I've been the same person the entire time. But because I handed in a letter, somehow I'm different.
I know what you're saying, because I also had friends that were messaging me, posing to me the idea of trying inactivity as opposed to outright disassociation. Like that was going to be a better call. And so I also had those moments where it was like, how do you think that this is better? If it's supposed to be wholehearted, you're recommending that I half-ass my faith so that we can still be friends. That's nonsense.
So now that you're both disassociated, you mentioned that since you disassociated, you're the happiest that you've ever been. What kind of new things has brought happiness to your life?
I think it's just the freedom of mind is the biggest thing. Being able to choose and be an active participant in our own lives instead of just blindly following what 8 guys in New York tell us to do. So, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a degree of self-awareness that has come with this that we didn't think about, because when you're in the organization, you don't really think about yourself and what you want and what you really believe, because anything that you want that's outside of the organization is sin, and anything that you believe outside of what they teach is apostasy. So, you know, we now have, you know, open discussions about, on a spiritual level, we talk about things like, energies in the universe and what we think might happen when we die. But then we also are able to freely and openly have conversations about, sexuality and morality, and finding, what is a real practical purpose for these things that aren't necessarily dictated by a book. So, yeah, the freedom of mind, like she said, there's a little more, you can be a more real version of yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I found that too. You raised an interesting point. You said that anything you might want outside of the organization is considered to be sinful. I absolutely found that myself as well. Not necessarily sinful in my case, but selfish. If you wanted anything that wasn't in line with the organization's goals, then it was selfish and you shouldn't want it. And I found that extremely frustrating and confining, especially towards the end of my, towards the end of my being a witness.
Career, I don't know what you would say. It really seems that way. We've had a lot of conversations about how the organization, particularly for those who are raised in it, you're not raised to be a functional person. You're raised to be a good witness, which means that now, now that I'm out, I'm 30 years old. So I'm not, I'm still pretty young. And yet I also, I can't remember the last time I needed to go get a job where I didn't talk to a brother to get that job. Housing. We are currently renting from people who are witnesses. There's just, you don't have to be good at being an adult when you're a witness, because there's so many people around. And I'm all for for taking care of people in a communal nature. But I also want my kids to, I want my kids to be able to be self-sufficient, whereas I'm 30 and I feel like I'm a 17-year-old learning how to, just manage my money, in an effective way, or find housing in an effective way. Because when you're you constantly have this fallback. You can mess yourself up so terribly financially, and there will be some couple that's like, we got a mother-in-law house out back. Don't even worry about it. You get, you're doing such good work at the meetings. Just take your time. And so there's not that that's inherently bad, but you also never land on your own feet. If that makes sense, sort of. I don't know. I have a hard time making friends. I will go out and I'm going to get a beer, and I look around at all of these strangers, and I know that I don't have anything in common with anybody. So, all right, guys,
I think that's a witness mindset, though, is the us versus them mentality. That's a big thing that we have to get over when we leave.
Absolutely. I mean, what you said, Dane, is I mean, I'm a little bit older than you, and I feel exactly the same way. There are days when I wake up and I don't feel like an adult. You know,
No.
I've got adult children, and I don't feel like an adult. You know,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the organization, and not just the Jehovah's Witness organization, but high control groups and cults in general. They infantilize their members as a way of keeping them dependent.
Yeah. And that's, that really is, because I've been listening to a lot of these various podcasts that do talk about other cults. And it is so funny because I remember us laughing about this stuff when I was in, just like, oh, how crazy must people be to believe in Scientology? And then you find out that a lot of their ideas and teachings really just totally line up with what we were taught. And it's just kind of like, oh, and it, when your mind is awake to these things, you do see how outrageous this stuff is. And it really is designed to keep you dependent, and it just depends what you're dependent on depending on which group you were a part of.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. I was on a Reddit not too long ago, and I was reading this post, and it was from a PMO guy. His wife was still like full PME, like Uber JW, right?
Yeah.
But he's gradually trying to wake her up. So he got her to watch a documentary on cults. I think it was the Leah Remini Scientology one, or
Yeah.
it might have been that, or it could have been another one. But whichever one it was, it spoke about the bite model. And his wife said to him, "Isn't Satan clever? He made them formulate the bite model so that it would also apply to witnesses." It's like,
Yep.
That's so cringy now.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I really laughed when I read that.
Yeah.
Satan has nothing to do with it. It applies to witnesses because witnesses are a high control group and a cult.
Yeah. Yeah. So like we had talked about how she woke up before me. So I was still very much mentally in this sort of like, no, they're good people. They're just misguided or what have you. So I was very hesitant to embrace the term, cult as far as that goes. But it's really hard to keep resisting that when you start looking at the definitions of cult. And I know that there's a big thing where they're like, well, there's no one uniform blanket, test for whether or not something is a cult. So when you start looking at the different ones back to back, and you realize, okay, it checks all the boxes on this one, but it also checks all the boxes on this one, and it also checks all the boxes on this one. If it looks like a cult and it smells like a cult, it's a cult.
Also, if it's similar to all the other cults as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, we didn't believe that an alien spaceship following a comet was going to pick us up and take us to, some, extra dimensional plane and whatever. But we just had our cult stuff very Bible based. And so, yeah. And everything's normalized. It's just, this is what it is.
So, Tiffany, tell us about your TikTok videos. What motivated you to start making your own after you saw the ones that you were first introduced to?
Thing is that I never thought I would be talking about this publicly, let alone online. And when I first started making videos about my experiences as a witness, it really resonated with people and it helped people out. And now I'm on a roll, I guess. Yeah, I think my goal is to provide support and help for people who are questioning or people that just need a community once they leave.
Yeah, that's a really admirable goal. And although I've been woken up for not that very long, just a little bit longer than you, but your videos have resonated with me in a very, very profound way as well. I watched your videos for a while before I started making my own on TikTok. So in some part, I have you to thank for that.
It means so much to me. Thank you.
So what plans do you have for the future in terms of putting recovering from your JW experience and putting the trauma of it behind you?
I think you should.
Well, naturally, we never celebrated any holidays or anything. So like I had mentioned, my son's birthday is coming up next month. And so we are planning on doing our first foray into celebrating a birthday. As far as that goes, probably going to keep it small, but try and make it fun and meaningful, and realize that nobody's going to get beheaded and have their head served to a pharaoh, or I can't remember exactly what the Bible story was, where they were like, and that's why you don't do birthdays. So we're going to try and do that. We've got Halloween coming up. So I think we're going to try and do some costumes and stuff and try and have fun, and all of these things that were such big no-nos. We're out recently, so we're going to try. We're going to try this stuff. I'll be honest. I'm 30. I've been set in my ways for a long time, so I have a feeling that I will probably try and oh no, thank you, when my birthday comes around. But but maybe it'll soften the blow celebrating for my son, because it's not. It's realizing that it's not a pagan tradition. It's me celebrating my son. And I love him so much, and I want him to know that he's special and that he's important, and that we can spend a day doing what he wants to do. And so those are little things. And continuing to build a community is another thing. It has been really fun interacting with some of the people on TikTok. I recently joined Reddit, have not been posting anything yet, but I am on there seeing things, and that's pretty interesting. We were able to sit down with a couple of other, with that group. We lost power. No, it was great. We had a great video call with a bunch of people who are referring to themselves as the Apostate Coalition.
The Apostate Coalition.
Yeah. So we met with them, and they're such nice people, and everybody is in their own spot. And that's what's so much fun, is realizing some people are still so physically in, but mentally out, and they're so scared to get away from that. We've got some people who are, vehement in there, just like, we are going to tear them down. And to see all of them simultaneously in the same place, just saying, hey, you're not alone, has been very interesting. So the recovery process for us has just begun. And so it's a lot. There's a lot in front of us.
Yeah, there are therapists that specialize in religious trauma, and so I feel like all of us need to go, because that's a unique experience that I think a lot of therapists are not well versed in. But it's also been very healing to have this community of ExJW and ex-Mormon and even ex-Scientologists. So yeah, it's been a really great community that we've met.
That's really great. I was actually supposed to be on that Zoom call with the Apostate Coalition, but something came up and I wasn't able to make it. But I'm definitely coming to the next one.
We were all having a good time, but we were in the middle of a storm, like a windstorm, where we were at. Not quite, nothing, gale force or it wasn't a hurricane or anything, but the wind was just enough that out where we're at, we've got some kind of older infrastructure. And so when the wind blows, it knocks a branch down and it hits the power lines, and we just lost all power. So we were right in the middle of, I was making a joke about the concept of Noah's Ark being outrageous. And as soon as I started making jokes about it, the power went out, and we're like, oh, Jehovah's mad at us.
Actually, that's an interesting point, because when I was just waking up, I'd go through difficult experiences, just things that are normal to quote unquote worldly people, things they've experienced their whole life. But when you're an ex-JW who's recently woken up, when these bad things happen, I kind of felt like this was like Jehovah punishing me. Did you go through anything like that?
Yeah. We're kind of new. We're a little bit newer to this, and so part of the sort of grieving process, I think, is maybe a little bit in the denial phase. So for me, for me, I'm looking at things like from a very logical standpoint. And I don't know, maybe it's because I didn't have the strongest faith when we left, but for me, all of the bad things have all been done by the people that we were associating with, and it had absolutely nothing to do with God, which is maybe a little bit why I still am open to the idea of God, because I don't think that God thinks the way that witnesses do. So, so for me, I don't think God's mad at me in any way. I think if God's out there, he's got his own stuff going on, and I don't think he's mad at me. I don't think he caused a storm for us to lose power. And if anything, I have seen good things come from it.
That fear that you mentioned is so valid. To me, it doesn't feel that way, but I think to people who are still in, they see it that way. And so there's this pressure inside of me that has to prove that my life is amazing now. But I've come to this realization that good things and bad things happen whether you are in or you're out.
Absolutely. And that's just the reality of life. That's a fact. Good and bad things happen to witnesses and non-witnesses alike. But the narrative that witnesses are always constantly pushing is that once you leave Jehovah, that's it. You're going to end up in prison, on drugs, or dead.
Yeah.
The world will chew you up and spit you out is a phrase that I've heard ever since I was a kid.
And to be fair, the world will chew us up and spit us out because we were raised witnesses and we weren't prepared for anything in the world. You're just designed to go to meeting. And so the world chewing you up and spitting you out is because you walk into the world so naive to everything that happens. I think about, for example, a thing that maybe was a primer for me leaving was in the States, we had the protests when George Floyd was murdered. And I know that witnesses are so actively against getting involved with any social justice ideals. And that didn't sit right with me because, the witnesses paint the picture of a better world, but are unwilling to work for it. The idea is exclusively that God is going to fix this stuff. You got problems with racism? Don't worry. Jehovah's going to take care of that. We don't have to do anything. And that bugs me because we're seeing real world problems, but we won't lift a finger to do this. If you have any feelings that are that way, they're just like, pray about it, go out and service, put the work in, and
I remember seeing something that said, if you choose to not do anything, you're siding with the oppressor. And that just spoke volumes to me. And I felt like I cannot just sit back and do nothing.
But we did because we were in.
Yeah. It's shameful now.
I feel exactly the same way. When I realized that what we were taught was just not real, and you can't just sit back and say Jehovah's going to sort this out in Armageddon, I felt a huge sense of responsibility to contribute in some way to, the world in general. And now I'm a bit further along from that. Now I see the witnesses' stance on getting involved in these things as like freeloading. It's like benefiting from this Satan's wicked system, but not doing anything to contribute positively to it.
Yeah. Well, and it's and again, it's all part of their doctrine and the idea that the world isn't going to be here this much longer, so why try and make this world a better place? Which it's just kind of it's frustrating because I feel like, especially due to COVID and us having access to the internet, there's so many things that we're watching the world burn down around us, and we need to actively work to fix it. rather than sit back and watch it happen and be like, ha, I told you so.
Exactly, you're exactly right. That's pretty much what witnesses say. I remember, I remember being at the Kingdom Hall once, and a circuit overseer was visiting. He was a really nice circuit overseer, actually. He was one of the ones that I remember most fondly. Really nice guy. But he was giving a talk, and he was talking about the signs that we're going to see in the sky just before Armageddon. And he was saying that he hopes that one of the signs is like big letters in the sky saying Jehovah's Witnesses were right. That's one of the things that he was waiting for.
You can dream anything you want. Yeah. Well, and that's actually, oh God, boy, the delusions of their own personal validation right there. See, and that one of the big things that woke me up is sort of that that witnesses have this idea that you are going to, what's that?
Oh, nothing.
Okay, sorry. Witnesses have this idea that everything word for word that is written down in the Bible is the stuff that's 100% going to come true, and that we need to follow 100% what the Bible says, down to the letter. And I ended up, one of the things that woke me up is the realization that either A, the Bible is something we need to follow word for word, and there is no way we got our translation right. Like, just realistically, there's no way that the translation is right. We're talking about thousands of years of difference between a dead language that was written then and, us trying to figure it out now. So if it's something we're supposed to follow word for word, we're already failing. Or B, it's a book about morality that you're supposed to take for its core principles and apply that in your life, and then the witnesses are already applying it wrong. So it became this thing where it's a lose-lose situation in my mind anyway. It was a lose-lose situation to stay in, because my idea of what the Bible is not going to line up with what they're teaching. And so it's just, there's no way that staying in was going to benefit me beyond social status.
So I totally get that. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to both of you, and I'm so pleased to hear that you're both really, really happy, the happiest you've ever been, to use your own words. It really warms my heart to see that and hear that.
Yeah. Thanks for talking to us. And I'm always excited to see your next TikTok, and I'm going to follow your YouTube channel, and I'll get on there. And this has been a really fun conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you for agreeing to do this. Thanks for joining me. And thank you, viewers, for joining us too. If you haven't already done so, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel with notifications so that you're notified of all my future uploads. And also follow me on my brand new TikTok account, and I'll leave a link in the description below so that you can do that. Please proceed to the Jexit in an orderly fashion, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching to the very end of the video. If you haven't already done so, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you like my work and want to help me continue doing it, please support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Jexit_2020. And with that, I'd like to sincerely thank these very special patrons who make these videos possible.